Hello, this is Dread from Epic Builds. In today's video topic, we're going to be going over my new build. It is Parasite Necromancer. Before we get into the video, I would suggest liking and commenting on the video, as that's the best way to tell YouTube I'm doing a good job. So this build, overall, is a complete blast. So the idea is we're utilizing the new node inside Dreadshade to spawn more volatile zombies off of a minion death. And why we're doing that is so that every single time a zombie dies, we get two parasites. Two parasites every single time, pretty much doubling our minion count. Pretty much allowing us to consistently get up to like 40 parasites very quickly. And it's very repeatable thanks to just having, all you have to do is just summon some zombies, spam some Dreadshade on them, and bam, you instantly have like 40 parasites again. The only problem I could say with this build is if you deal with stuff that has like a large amount of AoE, like for instance, I think like the desecrated fleshes, the dudes who spin around. Those guys are really annoying. But other than that, everything else doesn't really deal with it as well. Like Orbis has problems targeting the parasites, so you pretty much have like a lot of parasites against him as well. The build is a Necromancer, obviously. It's a little bit slower than your average build, but I'm like in 250 corruption. If you're like in basic like 100 corruption, this build would be flying. But yeah, we're also utilizing the HP on zombie death that gives us a lot of our sustain. There is a version based on ward that Amarathy has been working on. Pretty much he's getting up to like 10k ward consistently, and it's a lot of ward gain as well. He's getting a lot of ward with that build. I will link a build planner in the description of his version. He's not completely finished with it yet, but I'll keep it updated. But the reason why I wanted to go live was because of the specific node at the top of Necromancer that gives you 8% increased health regen per minion you have. Meaning, if we have like our max amount of parasites, we have 320% increased health regen, which is a lot of health regen. And it keeps us topped off all the time. Like you can tell whenever I take damage, I instantly go back up, and that's thanks to the zombies plus the health regen at the same time. Now, there are a few other things with this build. I was trying to run stuff like skeletons and stuff like that at the time instead of like drain life. And I realized that what was going on was my skeleton vanguards and my regular skeletons, they were stealing the Dreadshade buffs and they weren't dying. So what happens is when you spawn a parasite, it only lasts for 4 seconds. After those 4 seconds, it dies, which triggers the Dreadshade thing to spawn a volatile zombie. Now, that is why we have such consistent uptime, is because what happens is I just spam Dreadshade on my corpse parasites after I summon them, and they will keep summoning zombies, which will keep summoning corpse parasites. And that is really strong because you just keep, rotating through your corpse parasites and you don't have to worry about them dying often. Now, the problem is it's targeting. So sometimes you accidentally target a zombie, sometimes you accidentally target a skeleton vanguard, sometimes you accidentally target a skeleton, hence why I completely remove them from the build. No more skeleton vanguards, no more skeletons, bam, build works perfectly. Because what happens is you summon a zombie with your W, right? Like you'll summon like 3 zombies, then you will place Dreadshades on those. Each of those zombies will die and summon like 2 to 3 parasites, I think, per corpse. And then those zombies will die, but then they'll create more zombies thanks to the Dreadshade, 3 more zombies. And then if you place a Dreadshade on top of like a parasite, you can have max 5. So you want to spam as much as you can. And you can actually tell how many Dreadshades you have in the lower left, so you can see if you're spamming correctly. It gets exponential. And as you build up, it just more parasites, and bam, you're instantly a 40. And that is nuts. It's absolutely insane. Turns out having 40 minions is broken or something. Please do expect this build to be broken. So how we're doing damage is we're just doing the stereotypical poison route. Now, you could technically go crit, you could technically go melee crit. The problem is there's no base crit for parasites. They don't share their fire tag, so they don't get the base crit that the zombies get from the amulet Logi's Hunger. So you can't, like, you can go crit technically, quote unquote, but you can't. Like, you can, but you can't, right? And what this means is poison is our best bet. So they are melee minions, meaning they benefit from all the melee poison stuff on the tree. And it also makes it so we use Aura of Decay to give our minions poison damage and poison chance. And of course, Dreadshade actually gives poison chance now and poison damage inside of its own tree, making it so the overall benefit of going poison is much higher than just going crit. And it leads to us doing like sub-minute Orbis Shades at 250 plus corruption. And that is good. That's really good. This is, I think, the best Necromancer of the patch so far. I haven't really seen anything else that does this much corruption and does as well as this. So this is by far probably the best Necro of this patch, thanks to all the nerfs. So yeah, they added that node, the Dreadshade node that summons a zombie this patch. So I'm surprised that they did, because especially since it doesn't cost any mana cost. Like, I think it would, like, I think if they're to properly nerf this, they would make it so that the mana cost is spent on the zombie, but that would break the build pretty much. So I don't know how they'll do this. I know the ward version needs nerfed because mainly just because the large amount of ward you can get from the zombie health is nuts. Like, just how many zombies you cycle through. So that's probably going to get nerfed. But yeah, all of my builds will eventually get nerfed. With that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Here we are in game with the build here. It's the same Necro that I've been respecking on my standard stash. So the idea of the build, what happens, just to explain it, is we summon our zombies, right? Then I put Dreadshade on them. You can just spam it, it doesn't matter. And then attack an enemy, they'll leap. And then you see these parasites. As they attack, you can keep adding, and then you can use Drain Life to give yourself more sustain on single target. And it's about like 100,000. It gets up to like 500,000 later on. It's just hard to tell because the zombies, when they spawn, they're not aggroed on the dummy. So it's really hard to get accurate depictions. But if you want to see the DPS, obviously, you just watch the Orbis clip. That's a pretty good summation of that. So the idea with this is we're utilizing zombies. So we take 5 points into Forceful Commander so that when I do just hard summon the zombies, it costs a lot less, which is really nice. 1 point travel into Daunting Blast, 1 point into Dreadful Horde. The main reason why we only run one of this node is so that we don't add another 5-second cooldown, because that would bring it up to 10 seconds, and that's not consistent enough. Also, it raises the mana cost. And then, of course, Vile Force. When a zombie dies, it creates a corpse parasite on death for 4 seconds, but volatile zombies cost more mana, and that's just the base mana cost. Now, we get 2 of them per time a zombie dies. So a corpse parasite is a melee minion. It doesn't have any tags. Also, it does not get like intelligence damage scaling. So intelligence is almost worthless. So it's almost completely worthless to scale intelligence on this build. Obviously, you can for HP. That's what Amarathy does on the ward version, but they're pretty much just melee minions. And this pretty much just allows you to scale melee poison. Now, we take 5 points into Fervor. We want the more movement speed. We want our zombies to just be fast as possible, because we want them to detonate as fast as possible to create as many corpse parasites as possible. And of course, 1 point to Ferocious Horde. Amarathy swears by this node because it gives you a crud ton of movement speed as your zombies are always decaying, and I completely agree. Makes it so they get to packs much faster. Now, why are we using Leap? There's a reason why we're using Leap. I'll show you exactly why we're using Leap. So if we were to just summon a bunch of... Now, if I were having a bunch of corpse parasites fighting here, right? If I summon a zombie here, and there's corpse parasites right here where my mouse is, and attacking Orbis, for instance, right? The problem is, what will happen is the zombies, they will get body blocked by the corpse parasites, and it'll take longer for them to explode, what I noticed. Now, with the Leap, we completely get rid of that problem because they leap over the corpse parasites. So that's why we're running the Leap. Also, the Leap scales with their movement speed, so they go faster. Oh, so all this extra movement speed actually matters for the Leap because the more movement speed you have, the faster the leap is, so it actually gets them to targets much quicker. Then we take 1 point into Path of Destruction Travel, then 2 points into Necromantic Fervor. So you get 2% of the HP of the zombie on death. I am not scaling too hard into that. As you can tell, I only have 500% increased minion health. I don't have any healing effect in this. That's pretty much to the limit on what I'm doing right now. I'm just using it for extra sustain because most of my sustain comes from my insane amount of health regen. Now, Amarathy, this is what he does differently. He just goes for Vital Ward and then stacks as much ward as possible. In the passive tree, he goes for the ward on zombie, on minion death, stuff like that. He just does all that and he gets like 10,000 ward easy. While I went for the much more like the sustain way with the HP regen, right? Yeah, that's pretty much the zombie tree. Now, Dreadshade is the second most important tree. Dreadshade is like very limited on points, so every single point here matters. So 3 points into Wisdom of the Dead. You want Dreadshade to cost as little as possible because you are literally spamming it. Hence why I have to run. Mana regen. 1 point into Congregation of Shades. This makes it so you can have 5 shades at once, which is really good because making it so that you can spam 5 zombies at a time. 2 points into Frenzied Phantom. This is nice for your minions because since you're spamming it constantly, you're always reapplying it. So you're always giving your minions Frenzy. Also gives me Frenzy too. Let me show you. It actually gives me Frenzy too, as you can tell. So I get more cast speed as well, which is really nice. Helps me spam Dreadshade because the problem is what will happen is if you don't spam Dreadshade fast enough, you don't reach the 5 stacks. I'll show you. So as you can tell here, things die too quickly before I get to 5, right? So you always want to be killing 5 Dreadshades at once, so you get the max amount of zombie output. Then 4 points into Beyond Death. When a minion targeted by Dreadshade dies, you have a chance to summon a Volatile Zombie from its corpse. So this is pretty much making it so every minion that dies summons another Volatile Zombie. So for instance, if I have a Volatile Zombie and I put Dreadshade on it and he attacks, he will summon another Volatile Zombie from his corpse, which is really, really good. Really, really, really good. Actually, wait a second. Does that work how I think it does? No way. Wait a second. Okay, one. Oh, it summons 3. So it just spams the whole thing. Okay, then. That's a little broken. I think that's bugged. It should only give you 1. Yeah, okay then. All right. So that's how they'll nerf this build. They'll just fix the bug. Cool, cool. Just ignore that. It doesn't really matter. Even if it was just 1 zombie, it would still be a lot of corpse parasites. You know. Ignore the bug. It's funny finding a bug in the middle of recording like that. All right. And then the rest for Dreadshade here, we take 2 points into Lingering Doom for the necrotic damage, then 1 point into Vile Gas, so that all the increased damage from Dreadshade is poison damage, and of course we get a bunch of poison chance. Pretty much all you need to know, bunch of poison chances, all we want. Then we take 1 point into Blind Flurry. Blind doesn't matter since we're not critting, so it just gives us a lot of cast speed and attack speed for our minions that are applied by it, which is really nice. 2 points into Dying Coven for even more attack and cast speed. 3 points into Grim Fate for more damage for our minions, and then 1 point into Symbiotic Apparition. So we're affected by Dreadshade, so that we get the cast speed buff, so we can spam our abilities more, right, and get up to like 140% cast speed, which is really strong. That's pretty much it for Dreadshade. If you had +2 to Dreadshade, where would you put it? I would put it on Flesh Harvest. That's where I would put it. Because as your minions start dying, you'll get more buff effect, which is really strong. Either there or Lingering Doom. I haven't necessarily decided. You can always put extra point into Grim Fate as well. So I don't know exactly what I should do specifically on that. So that'll just be some experimentation. Now, Aura of Decay is important because we take 4 points into Aspen's Alive, just gives us extra healing. 1 point into Plague Bear's minion poison chance. So whenever we're within the AoE of our Aura of Decay here, as you can tell, our minions get poison chance, which is what we kind of need. And then, of course, then 3 points into Infectious Bones. Minions within Aura of Decay's effect deal more poison damage, is a lot of our damage. Then, of course, 3 points into Chill the Bone, so we chill stuff nearby. We're going to be in melee range a lot, thanks to the fact that we need to be in melee range to make our parasites do damage. 4 points into inoculation, so you take less poison damage. Eventually, you'll want to cap your poison res, and this will make it so you're completely immune to poison, pretty much, at this point. 4 points into Plague Rat for increased area. You want the area to be as big as possible so that you can fit as many parasites in your AoE as possible. Also increases your reach, so you can be kind of a little bit away while also still giving your parasites the poison damage. Then 1 point into Respite for extra poison res. Eventually, like I said, you'll want extra poison res. Then for Transplant here, we take 3 points into Acolyte's Fervor to give us cast speed, because cast speed is important because it means faster cast rate of Dreadshade. 1 point into Rain of Blood travel, then 4 points to Violent Emergence. Might as well grab the 20% coal while we're at it, makes bossing easier. 3 points into Last Laugh for the 60% increased minion damage. That's one thing this build lacks, is increased damage, so you want as much as possible. Because since the parasites, they don't scale off of intelligence. They don't get the 4% increased damage per intelligence. They only gain the health. It means stacking intelligence is normally how you get all of your increased damage as a minion build. But the problem is we don't get that. So we got to get our increased damage somewhere else. And this is one of our sources. Then 3 points into Bone Armor, 2 points into Plated Bone, 3 points into Apostasy, then of course 1 point into Drink Deep. It's like your normal setup for Transplant, like your normal survivability setup. Then Drain Life. This is important because this makes it so that when you are on a single target, here I'll show you. Spam this. Spam this so you guys can see. If I run out of mana, I can just put a Drain Life there and instantly brings back my mana up. Why is that happening? Well, we take 4 points travel into Empowered Drain, 1 point travel into Pestilent End, then 1 point into Grim Harvest. Drain Life can now target my minions. You gain 10 mana per second for each minion you are draining, which is a lot. Then, of course, 1 point into Necrotic Feast, so it only targets minions, so we only get our minions targeted, which is important because Drain Life only has so many targets, because right now it only has 3, but we can increase it later. Then 2 points travel into Ravenous, 2 points travel into Insatiable, then 1 point into Dark Shackles. This makes it so when we cast Drain Life, it's just on the ground and it just sits there and does stuff. Then 2 points into Enduring Night, so we get extra duration on it. And then, of course, 1 point into Grasp of the Dam. Now, it makes it so we have 10 additional targets from the beginning of 3. So we get 13 targets, meaning when we have this, we can have as many minions as we want here under it pretty much, and we get a bunch of mana from it. So that's mainly what we're doing there. Then, of course, 3 points into Thoughtsteal for the Drain Life cost less mana. This applies to the flat mana that Dark Shackles gives us, so it's just 30% less mana. 1 point into Condemnation travel, then 1 point into Contempt. This is just increased armor. We get a bunch of armor thanks to this node inside Necromancer, so it's just some extra armor on top of everything else. That's pretty much it for Drain Life. Now, for the passive tree here, it's your stereotypical tree. 8 points into Forbidden Knowledge for intelligence and necrotic res to cap out our resistances. 5 points into Dark Rituals. We're pretty much always spamming zombies, so the extra cast speed is nice. 8 points into Soul and Vitality, because we want as much vitality as possible because it helps our HP and our health regen. Of course, it gives us increased minion health, which is important because if you don't have enough increased minion health, your parasites will just die when something breathes on it. Then 3 points travel into Crimson Gluttony, just gives us the extra health regen. 1 point travel into Putrid Demise, then 6 points into Dominion of Rot for the 42% minion poison chance, which is really good for us because that applies not only to the actual melee attack of the minions, it also applies to the spell Explosion that the zombies do. Then, of course, we take 8 points into Risen Army for the increased damage and attack speed, 7 points into Blood Armor for the minion health regen, keeps them topped off, the parasites topped off, and of course, increased health regen is good for us since we're based on health regen. Then 8 points into Immortal Tether for extra minion health, 1 point travel to Mark of Punishment. Since you're killing so many enemy mobs all the time, this is pretty much always up on bosses. 1 point into Unbound Necromancy. Oh yeah, we can get rid of this, and we can get rid of this. I'm being dumb. So I would take this point out and this point out, and maybe put more points into Tyrant for more health for yourself. That's what I would do. And then use the rest of the points you get from leveling up into Tyrant. Or maybe into Cling to Life. Maybe Cling to Life instead. I haven't really decided yet. Then 5 points into Frantic Summons for the attack speed. 10 points into Rotting Army for the minion melee poison chances, where a large amount of it comes from. 3 points into Tyrant, you'll eventually want 8. 3 points into Cling to Life for life as well, you'll want 8. You don't want this node. I forgot to change these nodes after I converted out of skeletons. Then 3 points travel into Moonlight Pyre, and then eventually you'll have 10 points in this for the 30% necrotic res and 30% elemental res, pretty much caps your resistances for you. Then 4 points into Empty the Graves. This is what the build is built around. We get about 40-ish minions average all the time, so we get about 320% health regen from this, and we get about a large amount of armor, flat armor, which is really nice. One of the main reasons to play Necromancer. Then, of course, 5 points into Veins of Malice for haste and frenzy to make our. So one problem is the corpse parasites. They're very slow, and they only last 4 seconds. Meaning we really need to have extra like movement speed on our parasites, and that's why this node's there. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the passives. Now for the gearing, just so you know, my gear is absolute trash. Just to show you, because like I was in 250 corruption and my gear is absolute trash. It is nowhere near optimized, so that tells you how well this build is performing. And of course, for the helmet, vitality, you want minion health or intelligence, because you do want a little bit of intelligence for the base health so that your parasites don't die often. Then of course, health regen. And then of course for the amulet, mana regen, minion health or damage, then resistance and resistance, or like health regen as well in the suffix. So this is actually your perfect scepter. This is all you want. You want the minus your mana cost because it applies to Dreadshade, so you don't spam it, like so you don't lose as much mana. You want the skeletal scepter for the increased minion damage, and then of course you want the cast speed to be able to spam Dreadshade. This is actually perfect. You don't need anything else. You literally only need a blue wand. I know it's dumb, but it's like there's no suffixes that help us because the minion spell damage doesn't apply to our poisons, so it's kind of useless, right? And of course, for our chest, we run vitality, minion health, increased health, and HP regen. We run on the burial plate to help us cap our resistances. Then I am running a Bastion of Honor, but that's just because a Bastion of Honor is just kind of like your stereotypical shield. You could run any kind of shield, like any kind of shield at all, to be honest. You could run a shield with healing effectiveness on it to pretty much double the amount of HP we get from the zombies. Whatever you want. I'm just running a Bastion because I finally have one and I want to use it. But like, you don't have to actually use a Bastion. You can use like whatever. You can use a rare shield. Doesn't really matter. You can put minion health on the shield. You can put black chance. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? You could actually even run the poison resistance shield. And then of course, so you're capped on poison res as well. Cool thing. You want double coral rings, mana regen, minion damage, and then resistance and health regen. Then for the other one, you want another coral ring with the same stuff. Then with the belt, this is pretty much your perfect belt. Just the minion health didn't roll well, which is like whatever. The gloves, this is pretty much your best gloves. You want minion health or damage. You want the cast speed because you want to be able to spam Dreadshade. You want the health regen. And then you can actually afford to run hybrid health here because since you get so much increased health regen from the rest of the stuff, you don't actually need to run increased health regen here. Then same thing here, you could actually run hybrid instead of that increased health regen, but this is pretty much perfect. You could run increased minion life instead of the intelligence, probably better. Then of course for the relic, you want the Rune's Bone relic because you want as much minion movement speed as possible, because you want the parasites to be able to go from pack to pack without dying too quickly. You want minion damage by using level of minion or something. And of course, mana regen, and then resistance and regen or resistance. My idols are complete trash, as you can tell. I'm using it to cap my resistance because I don't have good gear right now. You probably want to run just all hybrid idols eventually once your resistances get fixed, or run all vitality idols, either vitality idols or hybrid HP idols. Either way, idols are pretty easy. There's no specific idols you want, so really just go crazy. Just HP, resistance. You can even run resistance. You can run health regen better over everywhere. You could run better bases. You could just run as much resistance as you want. It doesn't really matter. That's the beautiful thing about Necromancer, is he doesn't really care about his idols. Yeah, with that being said, thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at, and bye.